So Zarp is a patch that takes the idea of the Earthquaker device's arpanoid and kind of expands on it. So significantly, it's in stereo. Um, there are two versions. I'm using the tap version, so you can set a tap tempo. And in fact, on this second page, you have a number of clock dividers for that tap tempo if you want to set different divisions of the clock. There are two clock dividers in series, so you can set things like 2/3 or what have you. In the other version, which isn't tap tempo, there's a rate control here. Um, and the controls across the top are supposed to largely reproduce the controls of the original arpanoid. Um, so there's a dry level and a wet level and a steps control. As you increase the steps, the number of steps in your arpeggio increases. Right? These buttons through the center pick the top row of buttons, picks the direction. So you have up, up, down, and then down, and then the 8 modes, which are labeled not at all. But if you look up the the Earthquaker devices pedal or the patch notes, it's major scales on the left hand side and minor scales on the right hand side. One important thing to note with this UI button process is that it will always load with these two selections chosen, the up arpeggio and then the negative 1 octave to the root range. If that's a problem for you, like performing live or something like that, get in touch with me and I can talk you through how to modify the patch so that it loads at whatever condition you want. I like the UI buttons because it makes it very quick and visual to select choices. So we can do up, down. We can slow things down. Because of the clock dividers, it can take a second for the tap tempo to respond to changes in tempo. I'm going to speed it back up again. So the top half largely reflects the control set of the Earthquaker devices, with the exception of this push button here, which I called re-trigger. When it's off, the ARP is free running. When it's on, the ARP will re-trigger each time it hears new audio. So you get some more consistent results. For the most part, it's a little finicky. And then across the bottom, I expanded the control set to include some options. There's a glide control, so you can set glide between each step. So it sounds more like a single gliding oscillation. There's a deform control, which I really like. Essentially what that does is affect the swing parameter of the LFO that shapes the arpeggio. And using that, you can get all sorts of different rhythms that I think are quite interesting. So as we deform a little bit, we don't hear a whole lot. As we keep going, though, some notes play quickly and others take longer. So it gives you an option to play with there that I think really adds an awful lot to the flexibility of the sound. And then there's a low-pass filter, which is just, sometimes those upper octaves can get kind of nasally. And then you can extend the range. So this button here is called extended range, and what that does is it adds an octave to the range. So in the modes where it's plus 1 octave or minus 1 octave, it's now minus 2 octaves or plus 2 octaves. In the modes where it's plus or minus an octave, it's now plus or minus 2 octaves. So that's a you know, an option that's nice to have available. We can also set our on and off to momentary. So when that's the case, if you press down on the foot switch that controls whether or not the ARP is heard, it will only function when the foot switch is held down. And there's actually an additional control, a fade control, which is a slew limiter, so that you can fade in the arpeggios if you want. You see the light at the top gets brighter. And you can turn that off, and then it's just normal latching behavior, which you can turn off if you want. And the fade parameter controls it either way. And then finally there's a pan option. So when that's active, you'll see this light flashing, and you have a couple of controls. The first is a pan spread, which just it determines how far across the stereo field the pan goes. And since this is a monophonic microphone, I'm not quite sure why I'm demonstrating that. It won't pick up on it, but it's something that you might want to play with. If you're using this monophonically, this will add a tremolo, which is maybe something that's cool to play around with. The pan is always linked to the tempo of that's set. So you also have two shape controls. One is a triangle, and the other one is a square wave. And I don't know why the square wave isn't working. But I'll get that figured out. And yeah, that's the patch, with the addition that the square wave side will be figured out by the time you receive this. Sorry and thank you. Whoops.